Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. So these talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. Hello, online folks. Sorry about last week, but hello. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. So my name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead here at the Pervasive Media Studio. I'm a white man in my 40s with long hair and a beard, wearing a sort of flowy purple t-shirt thing today. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, offering you all the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put their hand up? Nobody is putting their hand up. Oh, there we go. One. Welcome. This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? The studio is a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, UWE Bristol, and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And we offer studio space, desks, meeting rooms, events, and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. A few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. There's a kitchen back there. You can make a cup of tea or coffee, grab some water. We have a quiet space just next to this space, to my left, your right, just through here. So if you need to take a break at any point, you can just pop in there. Well soundproofed. It's got some sofas and things. There are fire exits at either end of the studio. If you hear a fire alarm, we're not planning any drills or anything, so it's probably real. And you should go to the other end of the studio, again to my left, to your right. And there are fire exits at either end, but in any event, the studio team will direct you. And there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over in the corridor over there next to the kitchen. So there'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. Those of you who are watching online, you can pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Tony will be your voice in the room today. There's Tony. If you're in the building, you can raise your hand and we'll send a microphone around so that the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. One extra thing to add for today is that today is Watershed's 42nd birthday. So, happy birthday, Watershed. Yes. So anyway, our speakers for today are Sylvia Rimat and Charli Clark. They've been collaborating on a wildflower installation and audio experience called Broad Meadow, which is currently taking place over at Broadmead, just over there. Today they're going to talk about the research and design of the meadow, notions of identity and the influence of more than human species on the creation of the audio work, as well as the work they've been doing with secondary schools and community groups all across Bristol. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sylvia and Charli.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and I'm Sylvia.
Yeah, I'm Charli.
And we thought we'd start with a little exercise that we usually do when we do workshops in schools, usually with young people, but we thought it works with everyone. So basically, as our human bodies are populated by microorganisms on the skin, everywhere, and in all our organs, we thought we do a little exercise of greeting all the microorganisms that we live with. So if you could all take a finger to one of your eyelashes and say hello to your microorganisms on the eyelashes.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. And if you could take a finger to the space between your fingers on the other hand and say hello to the microorganisms there.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
And if you could discreetly take one of your hands under one of your armpits and say hello to the microorganisms under your armpits. So basically, we have more microorganisms in and on our bodies than our own human cells, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk a bit briefly what Broad Meadow is. It is currently happening in Broadmead until the 20th of June, so you still have time to go there and experience it. It's open every day from 11 till 6 p.m. And so it's basically, it consists of 55 wildflower boxes. that have been placed together in a meadow audience. There are also 2 stewards at all times who greet you. You can just walk in, sit down on a bench or a stool, and then listen to an audio work. And you can either bring your own phone and access the audio work via a QR code, or you can borrow some equipment and an iPod if you haven't got your own equipment with you. And yeah, and the audio work is really about our connectivity with the natural world. We'll talk about that later a bit more. And maybe one more thing to say is, yeah, we've been working with schools and community groups. We've done 12 workshops in the run-up to the project, and we'll talk about that a bit later as well. But I just realized we wanted to also introduce us, and I've come, maybe you start to introduce yourself.
We're just going to give a quick introduction of where we come from. So I'm from an environmental art background. I did my master's in Finland, where they had a specialist science lab called biophilia, which was specifically for artists with a science technician, so that you could sort of collaborate with different, I was going to say species then, but not species, I can't think of the word, sectors of the university. And whilst I was there, I worked a lot with insects and plants and pollen. And then I ended up working in a botanical garden with one of my works, and realised how important actually working with the natural world is if you want to, if you want to enable other people to experience its wonder. So then when I came back to Bristol, I started training as a gardener alongside my practice, and then the last few years I've been working to kind of merge them back together and to try and put gardening and botany into my arts practice.
Yeah, I'm a performance artist and a resident here at the Pervasive Media Studio. Yeah, so traditionally or previously I've been doing lots of live performances in studio spaces, but also site-specific work in galleries, one-on-one performance. And then I moved slightly to doing audio work and an app a few years ago, which was a geolocated app for audiences to go on a walk in Lee Woods. I've been for many years really interested in processes of the human mind, like for instance memories or how we experience time. And I usually work with academics and researchers in conversations in the lead-up or development process, and then compare or kind of fuse some of those findings with personal experiences, and to ask big questions, and yeah, feel like as an artist I have kind of the privilege to be a bit more fluid in the way how I go about asking questions. So over the last few years, I've focused more on our connectivity with the natural world. So the project I did in Lee Woods a few years ago, I was initially really interested how the processes like in our brains, or let's say the complex system of our brain, is kind of, well, I was comparing it with the complex system of the forest, and how signaling processes in forests via the roots of the trees and fungal systems are kind of really interesting to compare them. The electrical signaling with the electrical signaling processes in the human brain between neurons. But again, I also combined that with personal experiences and really asking the audience to experience the forest with all the senses. So this is really an important part of my work, to invite the audience in. But yeah, we would like to show you like a first video now.
I would like to take you on a little journey. Close your eyes for a moment and relax. Let's travel back in time, back to the Broadmead of the past, way back hundreds of years. Right here, there used to be a wildflower meadow. one day the meadow of the past will perhaps come back.
Luckily now, the project is all up and running, and it launched with Mayfest.
I would like to take you on a little journey.
So we've just developed our new trailer with like some documentation from the actual meadow in Broadmead. Broad Meadow is a wildflower installation in Broadmead. Audiences are invited to go into the meadow, take a seat and listen to an audio work via their phone. It's a very personal guide. You are invited to touch plants or the soil or smell a plant.
I would like to ask you to put one of your hands gently in one of the plant boxes and stick your fingers through the mesh of grasses to touch the soil. How does it feel? Soft? Moist? Crumbly?
I found it completely absorbing. It was really poetic and profound, and she encouraged you to close your eyes, and you don't really do that in Broadmead, but you just sat there surrounded by these flowers.
Restful, kind of really calm, and transported. Like, we were in Broadmead, I was conscious you could kind of hear the voices, but at the same time, we very much were in a meadow.
Broadmead is an area, a shopping area, where nature has been shut out. It's for humans only. And I'm interested in bringing nature back in. The work is also about microorganisms and how we are all connected, and about us really being communities rather than individuals, and being ecosystems rather than individual entities.
So this project has been a labour of love. It's taken months and months of building the plant boxes, selecting the soil, getting the right plants in here to try and reflect what would have been. Caring for these plants has literally taken over my life, but now to see it here, in situ, with all the shops and all the people experiencing it, and the response.
Just a bit of soil and a bit of sunshine and water, and here we are in the middle of this beautiful meadow which smells amazing.
So schools and community groups have been involved in order to help prepare the meadow, really. So young people feel they are part of creating this meadow. And once the plant boxes will be deinstalled, they all go back to communities and to some of the schools, so they can carry on and live as mini meadows.
What I wanted to do with the planting scheme was to try and bring the meadow that would have been here, sort of pre-13th century, back into Broadmead. We were able to find out from the records from the digs over at Quakers Friars, which is just a stone's throw that way, what sort of plants would have been here, just to give people a taste of what could be and what once was. We've got oxeye daisies, we've got campions, we've got gypsy wort, all these plants, red clovers, and lots of different types of grass. All these plants would have been here before we built Broadmead as we see it today. But it's not just about bringing something back from the past, it's also about looking forward to what could we do with our paved spaces, what can we do with our shopping centres, how we can make them more livable for not just humans but for all species, because we can't live without all the other species. And it makes our lives richer, it's a reason for living, isn't it?
Great, I'll hand now over to Charli, who will talk a bit about the historic element and the plants.
So we started by looking at some old maps of Bristol. So there's a fabulous book by Cotswold Archaeology where where the company that did the dig in 2005 to 2008, where they looked in the trenches at Quakers Friars, and this is basically here where they did the dig, and this is a map from the 1300s, or sorry, 13th century. Is that the 1400s or the 1200s? I never remember. But yeah, and you can see this is the outline of the city of Bristol at the time, and Broadmead would have been part of the suburb, very much part of the suburb. The River Frome is just going along here, just on the outskirts of the city, and that would have flooded during the winter, and also on a particularly large spring tide, the Avon would have come up, especially in the winter, and flooded the meadow with brackish water as well. So we know that at some point there would have been some kind of wetland or damp area, and then as the city expanded between the 13th and the 15th century, they would have started to drain Broadmead, and they would also started to build Broadmead up. So Broadmead back then was about 7 metres, I think, lower than it is today, and they would have built it up and built sort of pasture land and a suburb on top of what was there. So this would have been somewhere where where plants could grow, crops could grow. They found oats and cereals, but they would have also grazed animals. They found bones of cattle and sheep and pigs, and they would have also very much used it in a traditional agricultural system where they would have had fallow years. And so at some point it would have been more of a wetland, and some point it might have been more of sort of a hay meadow. So with these things in mind, we were trying to think about how we could bring a Broadmead of the past back to the Broadmead of now. So in the late 12th century, I think it was the son of the Earl of Gloucester, William, pronounced Broadmead as the new borough of the meadow. So like I previously said, Cotswold Archaeology did the digs at Quakers Friars, and they found all sorts of plants in macro remains, but also in pollen samples. These were found due to there was a high level of peat, so some of the plant matter was really well preserved. So we've got things like buttercups and docks and common vetch. You've got yellow rattle there and catsies and hawkbits. All of those would do well in a hay meadow. But then you've also got alongside, you've got Leicester spearwort, you've got meadow sweet, you've got gypsywort, and all of those plants are much more well suited, and the sedges and the rushes, to a more damp, marshy environment. So we know we've got sort of possibly two different environments at play here. So last year, me and Sylvia in the summer went to somewhere called Magor Marsh, which is just over the other side of the bridge in Wales. We went there because this is the subsoil description of Broadmead. So this is marine and estuarine clay and silt. So we wanted to just go somewhere where they had the same bedrock and possibly the same environment. And actually, since then, there's a little marsh called Hallen Marsh, which has now been opened by the RSPB, which is just on this side. It's a shame it wasn't open last summer, but it's open now. So that might also give clues to what Broadmead could have looked like back before the shopping centre and the development of human intervention. So with this in mind, we had to think about a way to keep the roots damp in a shopping centre where there's no soil traditionally and currently no water. So this is just one of our prototype plant boxes. So you can see there's a water tank underneath and some outdoor capillary matting and a hose pipe going down the side, and then the soil sits in the top and the water sits on the bottom, and the roots get watered from underneath. So this is just an example of one of the plant boxes being built. So they're all built with recycled scaffolding boards from a scaffolding company that donated them to us, and then also some from a reclamation yard, which also gave us some too. So you can see here, you've got the water tank in the bottom, and then a secret floor, and then the soil goes in the middle. So the soil is only about this deep, about 33 centimetres of the box. So when you're working outside, you get lots of adverse weather, and I don't know if you all noticed how wet and damp and then suddenly cold this spring was. I mean, when I say surprisingly, it kind of every year it gets us by surprise, but actually this is becoming very normal weather, unfortunately. But we did have lots of problems with the mud, as you could see. It was a bit like being in Glastonbury. but it's, so we had to do things like borrow bigger tractors, delay putting soil in, and sometimes delay putting the turf on. And then just as we thought we were ready, the snow came. So yeah, getting this project off the ground this spring has been quite challenging because of the weather. And that is always something to think about when you're doing any sort of outdoor project with plants, is that the weather, that's something you can't control. So the soil did arrive and the turf arrived and we managed to fill them. And then we had I should just tell you a bit about the turf actually. So the turf we chose, the reason we chose to put turf on instead of seeding it from scratch was because this turf was able to be seeded in November and we started our project late December. So in order for us to be able to have the established grass growth and the established certain plants, if we had turf there as an underlying base, then we could then plug plant the specific plants we wanted into that. So we have species here, very slow-growing, delicate grasses, and then we have some of the species that were in the historic dig. So we've got the knapweeds and the campions and the yellow rattle and the meadow sweet. So that was all there already in the wildflower turf. This turf is shade and drought tolerant, but also most importantly, can be suitable for periodic flooding. So that was always in our mind. How do we pick plants that will cope with periodic flooding? So then alongside that, we bought plug plants and then we grew them on and then we planted them all out. So we had volunteers come who either were doing their RHS level 2 or level 1 course or were interested in changing careers into horticulture. And they came and had some lunch, had a tour around the garden I used to work in, and then also helped with some of the planting. There you go. Quite a lot of plants. We also planted 12 of these boxes with schools, so it was a variety of these horticulture adults helping and the schools, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And then, this is just examples of some of the plants we've got in our boxes. I just wanted to pick out a couple of them that are really interesting. So the cuckoo flower, you may have seen in our video. That's the earliest, one of the earliest meadow flowers that comes out, and it really enjoys marsh environments. So we really wanted to champion that one. The common spotted orchid, and also the eyebright. And I'll just go over to the next page. And yellow rattle are all really interesting examples of where species of plant can't live without other species of plant or fungi. So the common spotted orchid needs a certain level of a special mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, otherwise it won't germinate. And things like eyebright sort of parasitizes, things like yellow clover, red clover, and yellow rattle helps to weaken grass, so you need grass seed for yellow rattle to grow. So when we're thinking about making an environment that's good for one plant, quite often you need another plant or you need other microbes and bacteria for the plants to be healthy. Kidney vetch is also another interesting one, which is actually prolific in our meadow at the moment. That is the sole food plant for the small blue butterfly. So it's a really, really important plant to try starting to get into people's gardens and to our meadows. And then, like I said, we've got a variety of unusual grasses that you wouldn't normally see, and rushes and sedges. That's just the video of the plants growing. As you can see, we've got some windmills and some tape. This is bird scaring tactics, because not only did we have to deal with the weather, but suddenly the pigeons took a real interest into our plant boxes. So we were there with various different ideas to try and keep the plants off our boxes. And then lastly, I just wanted to show you our plan from above. So this is the tree in Broadmead, if you have been or if you're planning to go. And then this side of the meadow was sort of a more of hay meadow, drier area. And then as you walk through the meadow to the exit, you get the flag irises and the meadow sweet and the gypsy wort, and that's the slightly more wetter side of the meadow.
Great. I'll talk now a bit about the audio work of the project. These are the welcoming words on the audio work. There are different strands that are part of it. I'll talk you a bit through it, but I won't give too much detail in case you haven't been yet and still want to see it, so I don't preempt everything for you. So it's really a guide for the audience to sit down and relax, and experience the plants with the different senses, looking at them, exploring, but also touching and smelling. And then there is an invitation for the audience to think about personal memories to do with wildflowers, maybe ones that have come through a crack in the concrete, or wild patches of land, perhaps a childhood memory of roaming through a piece of, a meadow or a piece of land somewhere. And then we take the audience really on a journey to the meadow of the past that Charli has been talking about. We go to the 1300s, and then even to before the 1300s, when there was just the meadow and the river Frome going through, and audiences can, through the audio work, imagine how this may have been like. And then coming back to the beginning, when we did this little task of saying hello to our eyelash microbes, etc. There is a link from the microbes in the soil to the microbes in the human body, and that opens up a whole part of the audio work about us essentially being many and us being ecosystems, because we couldn't live without all the microorganisms in and on our body. We can only live in symbiosis. And then there is a last part of the audio work, which is really like looking into the future, and a future where maybe the meadow will be coming back. Maybe one day all the shops might no longer be, the meadow might be coming back. And it's really also about cycles of nature. I wanted to give you a brief excerpt of the audio, and also just say I worked with sound designer and composer Sam Halmarak on the sound element of it. So he started working with the field recordings of birds and insects, but also the wind going through meadows and grasses. And from there he developed really like soundtracks to help the audience be transported and come along the journey on the audio work, and really also to have a emotive support through the audio element. Okay.
The plants around you wouldn't be able to live without them. If you feel like it, you can rub a bit of the soil on your face or on the back of one of your arms. Similar to the soil, our human bodies are populated by microorganisms that are alive. They call our bodies their home and live in our digestive system, on the skin of our arms and face, our eyelashes, our armpits, between the toes, everywhere. They are our friends, our neighbors, our family, and without them, we wouldn't be alive. Take one of your fingers to your eyelashes and say hello to your eyelash microbes. Touch the space between your fingers and say hello to the tiny living beings there. Discreetly move one hand under one of your armpits and say hello to your underarm microbes.
Okay. I would also like to talk a bit about here we are. About the main themes of the audio work. So we were really interested in, we've already talked a bit about it in connectivity, or our human connectivity with the natural world, or humans as ecosystems. Also really interested in narratives, as in the narratives we tell of our connectivity with the natural world, and from growing up really as small children, how we see ourselves in relation to the natural world, and identity and individuality, as in, like, if we are actually all ecosystems and communities rather than individual entities, what does that mean in terms of our identity and individuality? So this work has been inspired by various different academics and researchers. One of them is, for instance, Merlin Sheldrake's Entangled Life. Also, Robin Wall. So he's Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a biology professor, but she's also a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. And so what's really interesting in this book, for instance, is she brings in both a scientific perspective, but also very much so indigenous perspective on topics. And so that's really interesting because, there are some differing views there. Then I've also been interested in Professor Lynn Margulis, an evolutionary biologist who has been significant, bringing in symbiosis into evolution. And I'm also interested in Naomi Klein, who for quite a while talks about really narratives and how it's important in order to go ahead with climate action, to change the narratives that we tell ourselves about our connections with everything. So really as an important tool. And I wanted to give you, just read out a couple of excerpts. Maybe I start with Robin Wall Kimmerer, just to give an example of really our connectivity and the different perspectives that I was talking about. So she writes quite early on in the book, in the Western tradition, there is a recognized hierarchy of beings with, of course, the human being on top, the pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and the plants at the bottom. But in native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as the younger brothers of creation. We say that humans have the least experience with how to live and thus the most to learn. We must look to our teachers among the other species for guidance. So it's really about this relationship between us and the natural world, and how we see that relationship that informs the way how we go about and interact, really. And I want to continue with Merlin Sheldrake. Lots of you may know him. He's written this bestseller book, Entangled Life. And he talks quite early on in his book about a conference that he attended in Panama on tropical microbes. And he writes, and along with many other researchers, I spent 3 days becoming increasingly bewildered by the implications of our studies. Someone got up to talk about a group of plants that produced a certain group of chemicals in their leaves. Until then, the chemicals had been thought of as a defining characteristic of that group of plants. However, it transpired that the chemicals were actually made by fungi that lived in the leaves of the plant. Our idea of the plant had to be redrawn. Another researcher interjected, suggesting that it may not be the fungi living inside the leaf that produced these chemicals, but the bacteria living inside the fungus. things continued along these lines. After 2 days, the notion of the individual had deepened and expanded beyond recognition. To talk about individuals made no longer sense. Biology, the study of living organisms, had transformed into ecology, the study of the relationships between living organisms. And further down, he says, he talks about concepts, scientific concepts like time or chemical bonds, and then individuality. And he says about the concept of individuality, from one perspective, individual is no different, just another category to guide human thought and behavior. Nonetheless, so much of daily life and experience, not to mention our philosophical, political, and economic systems, depends on individuals, that it can be hard to stand by and watch the concept dissolve. Where does this leave us? What about them, me, mine, everyone, anyone? And then he says, it made my head spin to think of how many ideas had to be revisited, not least our culturally treasured notions of identity, autonomy, and independence. Evolution, ecosystems, individuality, intelligence, life, none are quite what I thought they were. So really, yeah, the notion, if we are many, what does that mean about identity and about our society, that it's based on or built on us being individuals and individual entities. Yeah, I'll hand over to Charli.
I'll just tell you a bit about our schools programme. So we took one of the meadow boxes into each school that we went in, and so we had to make a few modifications. So the meadow boxes are built to about this height, so they're 3 floors of scaffolding boards, so that when you sat in the meadow, you were sort of at the height of the soil, so you could really get in there and be like a creature down low in the soil, because normally we're used to looking from above down to a meadow. So we wanted to enable that experience to happen. So we took the water tank off, because you don't need that for the move, and then we put wheels on, and then we put sort of a secret bottom in here so that we had less soil. And then we turfed it and took it into schools with a sort of altered wheelchair ramp and a pulley system, so that it couldn't fly out of the van and hurt anybody. It was still about 300 kilograms in weight, even when we'd taken everything away. So the boxes in town are about 700 kilograms on a rainy day, so they are really quite heavy things. This is the kids planting some of the plants. So I took a variety of plants into school with me, some with fibrous roots systems, some grasses, some flowering plants, and then also things like irises with a tuber system, so that we could talk about all the different ways that plants access nutrients from the soil and hold nutrients and flower and reproduce and things like that. Yeah, and then we also, alongside that, did a bit of citizen science, where we looked at different soils, because the soil in the meadow is a very specific low fertility wildflower soil. So we also had some clay-based soil, and we played with that. We did a bit of what's called the sausage or the ribbon test, where you make a sausage and you make it as long as you can. And if it's got more clay in it, you manage to make a sausage. If it's got less and more sand in it, it sort of falls apart. And then we also did things like looking at pH in soil, because that's really important if going forward to know what you can plant in various different places that you might want to plant things. We also did seed bombs with them. So we had some wildflower seed with us, we had some clay, and we had some compost, and we encouraged them to either throw them on their way home or throw them in their schools, throw them in their local environment, in their parks. And then lastly, we had a bit of a writing task where we talked to them about thinking about memories that they've had with nature and experiences that they've particularly remember where they felt close to nature. So we've just got a few examples here. When I was younger, my nan and granddad used to have an apple tree in their back garden. My nan has since moved away, and my granddad has passed away. However, the tree makes the most delicious cooking apples, and we used to go to the highest part of the tree to collect the apples. In the summer, my granddad would put up a swing in the tree, and me and my siblings would swing. I loved it. In my nan's driveway every summer, there are large bramble bushes growing blackberries. when we pick the blackberries, we always put them in a container for later. When I was at the place called the Heath Park, Health Park, sorry. When I was at a place called the Health Park, I was swinging on a swing when I saw a large cocoon and I kept going there and checking it. One day I saw a beautiful, vibrant butterfly come out and I took a picture as it flied away. And I turned to myself and said, I saw the transformation of a butterfly. Wow. So some really nice moments coming out, getting the kids to think about their past experiences. And then from that, we looked at how we could take ideas of putting more nature back in our cities, in our streets, in our neighbourhoods, and also this was a workshop at West Media Centre, so also around the immediate area that we were or the school that we were. So we had very practical ideas like how can we put a pond in, how can we have a space for some wildflowers, how can we have sort of veg patch, to more crazy ideas like Bristol's got loads of hills, why don't we just make more hills by putting all the soil over the houses and grassing them so we all live under hills. There were some really fabulous ideas coming out there from the kids, and yeah, we had a lot of fun. In total, we did 12 workshops, so we did some in the schools. We had sort of mainstream secondary schools. We also had some with SEND provision and also some specialist SEND schools, and then St Anne's House and also West Media Centre. So we went sort of a variety of places in Bristol to do the workshops. And yeah, alongside the writing task, we also had a little insect matching game where we picked specific flowers from the meadow and specific insects that are really important for those flowers and vice versa, and they were able to match and pair them as a game.
So we currently have also some family activities on some of the days alongside the meadow. So the workshops were for mostly Key Stage 3 students, and these family activities are for children aged 3 till 10 and their families, so quite a bit younger. And we just wanted to show you a few of the photos. We've done 3 of them already, 2 of them at Broad Meadow, 1 of them in Northwest, and 1 more of them will happen on Sunday, if anyone with children wants to come along, 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. And so yeah, we basically used a lot of materials from the scrap store and other recycled materials and some general arts and crafts materials to make different types of insects. And here are a few of the photos. And that's about it, really.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. And if you have got any questions, please ask.
Thank you both very much. I think we do have time for a few questions. Anyone want to stick their hand up? Okay, just going to bring you a microphone.
Yeah, I just wondered where you built the boxes. I didn't recognise the area.
Yeah, so it's a little village outside, just past Wick. So Doynton village, yeah, it's where I used to work as as part of my professional gardening side, and they lent us the field, and then it was actually a team effort for the village of Doynton. So I will give them a shout out because we had the field from one house, we had the water coming over the hedge from another house to water them. We had to borrow a bigger tractor from the house down the road, and then in the end, a farmer with a telehandler helped us to load the boxes onto the truck to bring them to Broadmead. So actually, the whole village of Broadmead, the whole village of Doynton kind of pulled together. Was firstly seeing these boxes in the field, then asking, what are they? Some people thought I was building giant beehives, which I had to explain that they would never work because they were too big. And then somebody thought I was building boxes for cows to eat from. Anyway, there was all these various ideas swirling around on what's going on with these boxes. But, over time, the village heard what was going on and people offered to help. So it's been really great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really inspiring how you've kind of brought nature and kind of some wildness into Broadmead, which you don't associate it with either of those things. I was just wondering what inspired you to choose Broadmead?
Yeah, so really we started with the idea of a city centre context where that is completely concreted and where nature has been shut out. And then we came across the Broadmead with its name potentially coming from it having been a meadow, and it felt like a really good extra kind of level or strand to the overall project.
Yeah, we could not do it then, could we? Yeah. There was a bit of history as well, and with the archaeological dig giving an idea of what could have been, then it kind of felt like we had to try and put it back or something like, yeah.
I noticed that in the meadow flowers, quite a few of those would be used as like healing herbs. I wondered if you had any information on that as part of your project, or if that's...
Yeah, so I was also aware of that because I think kidney vetch is also it does something, I can't remember now what it does, but yeah, there's also the woundworts, and yeah, there's a lot of plants in there that actually would have traditionally been used, but we haven't actually gone down that route because we ended up going down a more, I don't know, looking at our microbes and looking at our and ecosystems in general. But it is another really interesting angle, and actually some of the people who've come to visit the meadow have said, oh, I've had this as a child, we called it this name. So there's actually been that really interesting learning about new local names for certain plants that I would have never used. Like, I think the oxeye daisy, somebody called it a dog daisy. I'd never heard of that before. So that was really nice as well. But yeah, it'd be nice to think about that for a future.
Hiya. How did you forge the connections with the schools that you worked with?
It was a real mix. A mix between schools we had worked with before, and then we worked with Bristol Works, who are kind of a Bristol City Council initiative, and they teamed us up with quite a few schools. And then we did quite a few workshops also at Northwest Media Centre with their different types of groups that they have. Yeah.
Thank you.
Has this project inspired you to try or to look forward to maybe future plans for similar projects either in different parts of the region or maybe even in other parts of the country?
Well, I would say we would be interested. Yeah. It's just it all comes down to funding really, because it's with all these plant boxes, etc. So, for instance, coming from a performance background, I'm used to taking pieces of work then to other places, but it would not be possible with this project. And I don't know if I actually mentioned earlier, so all the plant boxes, they go afterwards to communities and schools so they can continue to live. But we would be interested in that, but it would be basically developing it from scratch again.
Have you found getting the funding difficult for this one then?
It was quite difficult.
We didn't
that's
actually,
not a surprising answer.
We didn't actually get quite the full funding for the full idea that we had, but actually in the end we managed to do it with, like I said, with the massive generosity of the village of Doynton, and and then also things like the scaffolding company donating the wood to us. So we actually, although we didn't initially think, we thought we'd have to scale the project back, and in some areas we did a little bit, but actually with the generosity of people around us picking up certain things, we managed to pull it off, sort of thing with the funding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, so brilliant to see this idea come to life. Congratulations. Yeah, I was just wondering, because we've heard quite a lot about the interaction that you've had and that the Meadows had with living beings around Bristol and in your village. But could you talk a little bit about the relationship to Broadmead itself and people and other living things that are there?
Yeah, so there are the different connections, like you talked briefly about some of the plant species that were found in the digs, so the plant species that relate back to the meadow of the past. And then the work itself is really site-specific also. I don't want to preempt it too much, but it really draws on the different buildings there as well, but also draws back on our body and microorganisms. It's quite interwoven, but yeah, I don't want to give it all away.
It's also been interesting because there's a community of people who spend a lot of time down in Broadmead, and we've had pretty much all good feedback about the plants boxes being there. Some people asking why they're not there all the time. We do unfortunately have to Harris fence it at night, so we've had some people saying, why Harris fence it? Because I think they want to come and sit in it in the evening. And then also actually the day after the plant boxes arrived, we had 3 different types of bumblebee arrive. We had a tree bumblebee, we had a common carder, and we had a buff-tailed bumblebee. And where did they just heard about it, you know? So I think if you do make space for nature, it will come. We've had ladybirds laying eggs, we've had various different types of crane fly.
Green beetle.
Yeah, the chafer, the green chafer beetle came. So we've had slugs and snails, of course, and there's probably loads of worms and things in the soil anyway. So yeah, we've had like a real, and ants have come. Yeah, so it's interesting because you think, oh, what are we going to find? How many insects can actually come? But yeah, the flies as well. It's been amazing. I think because it's a stopgap between Castle Park and you've got the river, and then you've also got St James, you know, by the bus station. I think it's St James. So yeah, they've come. Maybe they come in from Brandon Hill. Bees can fly quite a long way, so maybe they've heard on the wing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's amazing. It's such an amazing, nice project, and I guess I'm sympathising with the people who are like, why couldn't we have something like this more permanent in the centre of Bristol? And I guess from doing this work, what are maybe the barriers or opportunities you guys see for this kind of urban wilding project that seems to bring people so much joy?
I think the barriers are to do with sort of simple things like the Christmas market that needs to happen. Because that was part of the reason why we can't have the meadow there all the time, is because they need movable street furniture. However, they have agreed to keep 10 of the boxes probably round the tree, which is about here, with a bench, so that there can be some element of this for future, because yeah, a lot of the businesses and also the business improvement office have sort of said, oh, it would be lovely to have it, but it's just that negotiation between you know, who's using the space, what and how, isn't it? And yeah. Yeah.
I was just wondering whether there was any connection or questions asked by people visiting as to how they could achieve something like this in their own gardens. And the reason I asked this is that I entered the Avon Wildlife Trust Wildlife Garden competition last year, and I am the winner. You could have knocked me down with a feather, but
congratulations!
And I've got a very, very small garden.
Fantastic.
And one of the things I did was to actually get some, rather than have lawn, I got wildflower turf. But it's amazing what's happened in the garden since I've done that. But it's one of those things, is that if everybody did a little bit, and just wondered whether anybody asked about that, or whether you would kind of encourage people to use wildflower turf in their gardens.
We've had a surprising number of people ask where the plants come from, how to get this effect at home. So the wildflower turf is from the Wildflower Turf Company. So and that was purely basically because they had this SUDS, they had this this flooding turf. And it actually included kidney vetch, which I thought was really important to champion because of the small blue. And there were other companies that also did that turf but didn't have those certain species in it that I were looking for. Then also in terms of the plants, we got some from Grow Wilder, we got some from Plant Wild down in Somerset, the Blooming Wild nursery, and we got some from Cumbrian Wildflowers because they do a trade. So we got plugs from them. Oh, and Naturescape as well. Naturescape. So a whole variety of places, because you couldn't get everything you wanted from one place. So you had to shop around.
I wondered, you know how sort of garden species are kind of sometimes becoming invasive to meadows? did anything pop up in your troughs that was unexpected?
Yes, I think it's called marsh spinach, but it's not, is it marsh spinach or it's something spinach? I think it's a brassica. It's in one of the corner boxes on the edge, and you actually see it everywhere on the pavement, you know, coming out through the cracks. And it's like a tall plant like this with tiny yellow flowers. It looks a bit like it should be an oilseed rape that's escaped, but it's not, something else. And I hadn't really paid attention to it until it was in the meadow, and I was like, oh, hang on about. So yeah, we have had a few interlopers, and that's one of them.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful project. I just wanted to ask about the relationship between the artwork and the workshops. So did you kind of from the beginning thought that it would involve these workshops, or was it important for the funding to have some educational aspect to it? Did the workshops feedback somehow into the artwork? So what's the relationship between?
Yeah, it was really important from the beginning to us to have these workshops, really to engage young people in the process of developing the work and the meadow, and also to think about growing our audiences, to bring young people in who may not otherwise have come along. So we have quite a bit of we've got audiences who decide to come and see the work because they are booking or they've read about it. Then we've got quite a few people who just pass by on Broadmead and see it and decide they give it a go. We also, the audio work is quite short. It's 20 minutes so that people who just pass by may be able to fit it in between their shopping. And yeah, so we worked with a lot of schools also and communities that would be kind of classed probably as disadvantaged, because we also wanted to ensure that this kind of work is not only available for a specific type of audiences, but really wanted to widen the access to it. So that's why it was there from the beginning, really. Mm.
I think that's probably all we've got time for. Do you want to remind people when the thing is on until?
Yeah, it's open till the 20th of June, so Thursday in a week, and it's open every day from 11 till 6. And you can just go there. If you can, just take a pair of headphones with you.
We do have headphones.
We do also have some
little iPod shuffles for people to borrow if that's not possible as well.
Yeah, and you can book via Head First. If you come in a larger group of people, maybe advisable, but usually if you just turn up, there is usually space for people. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sylvia and Charli.
Thank you.
All right, before you all go, please don't forget today is First Friday. So from 5 to 6 p.m. today, we've got our monthly social event. Come along, grab a drink, see some work that our community has been producing. I believe Sylvia and Charli will be there this evening as well. So you can grab them and talk about flowers. If you want to stick around at Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do. Yeah, I've said that like a million times. Then please come find one of the studio team and we'll be happy to help. Studio team, can you give us a wave? Everyone down the back today. If you're watching online, drop us a line at studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you all again next time.